Hey everyone, welcome to another Top 10 list. This week's Top 10 list is the Top 10 Short-Lived Series. Gina R was the one who suggested that I do a list like this, so thank you very much, Gina, for doing that. If you guys have not checked out Gina's channel, please do. One of my favorite things about watching Gina's videos is when she does it, even though you don't see her face, you can hear her smile. And that is my favorite part. No matter what it is that she's talking about, she always brings a smile to my face because I can tell that she is having fun doing what she is doing. So please check her out. Very cool channel. And thanks again, Gina, for suggesting this. So we'll get this out of the way. I've got Gina's name up front over there. And let's tackle the top 10 short-lived series. Now, there are a couple honorable mentions. First honorable mention would go to, this is a 1963B. This is one of those infamous Barr notes. 1963B Barr note. Joseph W. Barr was only the Secretary of the Treasury for 30 days. So his particular series of notes was extremely short-lived. However, the only portion of the bill that is short-lived is his signature. The rest of the bill remains the same, which is why I didn't include that as one of my notes in the short-lived series, because other than the signature, it's just another $1 bill. So that was an honorable mention. Also in the honorable mention list, I pulled out the 1988 notes. 1988, these two particular notes are consecutive, and they are also just beautiful in condition. I pulled these out because there were notes produced in 1985, then they produced the 88s, and then shortly after the 88A, and then after the 88A, the 1993s came out, which means that did not leave a whole lot of time for the 1988 series to go into production. So once again, it's no different than any other $1 bill, much like the 63B, but the 1988 is a short-lived series, even though there aren't obvious changes. And that takes us to 1993. The 1993 bill was produced obviously in 1993, but they came out with the next series in 1995. So also a short run as far as notes go, but like I said, the note itself is really no different than any other note. That's why it's just on the honorable mention list. This one I pulled out a star just to be different. And the last group on the honorable mention list were the 1890 Treasury notes. The 1890 Treasury notes, I have them on the honorable mention list. Yes, it's the watermelon and the grand watermelon, among other things in that series. But the reason why I put them on the honorable mention list is these came out in 1890, and the backs were just loaded with green. And in 1891, they came out with a version. Here's what the 1890 would look like. Here's the 1891. The 1891s had a lot more white on the back. So from the front of the bill, you don't really see any changes. From the back of the bill, they wanted to make sure that you could see the fibers and stuff to make them a little harder to counterfeit. So that was the 1890 and 1891. I didn't include those in the list, like I said, because there were changes made to the backs, and I don't really know how long they were in production for. So they're just going on the honorable mention list. All right. So now that we're this far in, let's actually hit the top 10. Number 10, the series that I put at number 10 was the Monochrome series. Some of you may have some of these in your pockets. The Monochrome 5, the Monochrome 10, the 20, the 50, and the 100. When we changed over from the small head bills, the first step was going to the monochrome bills, and after that they got rid of the oval and they colorized the bills. So the monochrome bills were fairly short-lived. I want to say they were from about 1994, 96, something like that, to about 2000. So they were only around for a few years. They're still in circulation today. You can still find them. Finding them in good condition is a little tougher of a challenge. But yeah, the monochrome notes, that would be number 10 on my list. Number 9. Number 9, we're going with the silver certificates from the 1934 series. And the reason why I suggest 1934, it doesn't matter if it's 1934, 1934 A, B, C, D, but the 34 series in general, because in the 34 series, they put in these blue numerals here. I'm a huge fan of those blue numerals, and once they came out with the 35 series, they did away with the blue numeral like that. So the only year you can find the blue numeral is the 1934 series, whether it's 34, 34A, B, C, D. Only time you're going to see the blue numeral. So that's number 9 on the list. Number 8. Going to the 1928 series. Series of 1928 was the very first year for the small size currency. Before that, we had much larger size currency, and the Fed wanted to save money on printing costs and on paper costs, so they decided, well, if we reduce the size of the bill by a third, we can reduce the cost by a third, and that's essentially what happened. Now, the very first run was Series 1928, right there, 1928, right there. And being the small size notes, the Federal Reserve seal right here is listed as a number. Now, on all of our notes, this one being Chicago, they're both from Chicago, 7 always had represented Chicago. So you've got the 7s here, which is the same on currency even today. However, the only time in 1928 when you would see the letter for Chicago, G, used was in the serial numbers. Now, starting with the 1928A series, they changed the number to a letter, and at that point, you're going to see a G here in these two spots rather than the number. So the 1928 series, the only time you're going to see the number is in the 1928, not the 28A, B, C, D, nothing like that. So that definitely qualifies as a short run or short print run. 10, 9, 8. Number 7. Number 7, I got a bunch of these. These are fractional currency. Fractional currencies were put out during the Civil War. They were put out during the Civil War because people were hoarding change. They were hoarding precious metals. They didn't want to turn in precious metals because precious metal is a precious metal. It has value in and of itself, aside from being currency. The 3-cent one is always my favorite. I think that one's really cool. The fractional currencies were in existence because obviously they were using metals for weaponry, and that made it so much tougher to actually mint the coins. Now, these were in existence from, I want to say, 1963 to about 1863 to about 1875. So these are around roughly 10, 11 years, and that was pretty much it. So that would be next on the list. This was number 7, the fractional currency of the Civil War. Number 6. Speaking of wars, I have the North Africa series from World War II. These are series 1935. This is a silver certificate 1935A, and as I pointed out, from the 34 to the 35, you do not get the blue numeral here. So the silver certificate from 1935A, these with the yellow represent the North Africa note. Now, what's interesting is this is a 35A, and if I go to the next ones, these were actually 34s. So they do have the blue numeral. So the 34 and the 35, 1935 silver certificates from the North Africa Emergency Series from World War II. Now, obviously, these were only used during World War II. There was no need to keep them in circulation after the war was over. So that makes them quite short-lived as well. 10 is beautiful here with that numeral there. The 1's a little rough. The 5 is, of course, the keynote. The 5s are the keynotes in all of these series as far as the World War II emergency currencies go. But yeah, that is definitely a short-lived note. Backs, of course, look very familiar to everybody. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Number 5. If we're going to talk North Africa notes, then we most certainly have to talk the Hawaii notes. Hawaii notes, 1935A right here, 1934A, 1934A, and 1934A. The complete set of Hawaii notes. You have the $1, which is a silver certificate. You have the $5 Federal Reserve note, $10 Federal Reserve note, and the $20 Federal Reserve note. Now, once again, these were put out for World War II. Oh, that goes down there. These were put out for World War II. And once the war was over, once again, there was no need to keep these in circulation. So another short-lived series of notes. That is the full set right there. Number 4, you got a sneak preview of this one. Number 4 is, we're going to zoom in tight on that date there, a 1928 Gold certificate. This is an actual gold certificate. This was backed by gold. This wasn't just redeemable for gold, because all money is redeemable for gold. This actually had gold put away to represent, or it represents gold that has been put away. It has the gold seal on it here, has the gold serial numbers here. Take a look at the back. From the back, it looks like a normal bill. And the small-sized gold certificates were short printed because 1928 is when these were made, and by 1933 the federal government said you're no longer allowed to own gold. You are allowed to own gold jewelry, but not gold for the purpose of stacking, so to speak. So these were all pulled. So from 1928 to 1933, after that you couldn't get these anymore. I definitely call that a short run. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. NumberThree. NumberThree isn't a series in and of itself, but these are the 1923 notes. The 1923 notes, we're going to start off showing the 1923 silver certificate. This is known as the horse blanket. Very cool bill. 1923 horse blanket, and from there we're going to go with the 1923 silver, or $5 silver certificate, the porthole note. Once again, 1923, you can see that there. And another example, of course, from the 23 series, this would be the poker chip, the $10 legal tender. Now, I put all three of these together not because they have similar values, but because they have similar timelines. If these were all from a series of 1923, which of course they were, 1928 we made the small size notes. And if you have a small size note, then obviously the large size notes are no longer going to be in service. So the 1923 notes, whether they're silver certificates, whether they're legal tenders, the 1923s were only around until 1928. Once 1928 rolled around, these were obvious, and these were very easy to find. It was obvious these were not new notes, so they were pulled from circulation. So that would be the 1923 series, all of the different series from 1923. Number 2. Speaking of gold certificates, the same problem arose with the gold certificates of 1922. The 1922 gold certificate, there's the 20 right there, and if I go to this one here, you see the 1922 $10 note. The $10 and the $20 1922 were also victims of circumstance, much like the 1923s. The 1922s were pulled from circulation starting in 1928 when we moved to the small size notes. So the only time that you could get these was in that short period of time from 1922 until 1928. After 1928, once again, these notes were very easy to spot and were pulled immediately from circulation, thus making them much more difficult to get. So that was number 2 in my list. Number 1. Any guesses? I'm sure there are. I even went to my safety deposit box because for this number 1, I wanted to make sure that I brought out the real deals. So these last notes, this is the complete 1896 educational series. Educational series from 1896. These are all the real notes. These are not reproductions. The real deal. 1896 silver certificate. Here's the $1 silver certificate. Show the back on here. This one's graded at 25. A little bit of rust spot on there. The 1896 silver certificates. These notes were put out as the educational series to help educate the public. I've done numerous videos showing each of the individual notes and telling what they all meant. And it's a very cool series with one little flaw, which was when you get to the $5 note, there was a lot of concern over this center picture here, and because of that, the population said, no, we do not want these notes in circulation, and they were all removed and were replaced with the 1899 silver certificates. So these notes came out in 1896. By 1899, they were done. They did start work on a $10 version, but once there was the uproar, they ceased to produce those. So, like I said, for my number 1, I wanted to make sure that I pulled out the real notes. These are not reproductions. I do have the full set of these. One of the one of my crown jewels in my particular collection, having the complete educational series. Yeah, that would definitely be number one on my list for short run notes. All right, guys, that's what I've got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed the list. If you disagree with any of my orders, go ahead and leave a comment down below. If you like what you saw and you think I got it right, go ahead and give me a like. If you have an idea for a list that you want to see me do, leave that down in the comments. I will do my best to try to put one of those together. Once again, I want to thank Gina R for making the suggestion. Normally I do top 10 notes. Here I was able to do top 10 series. I think there was over 30 some notes I was able to show right here. And that's the impressive part about collecting paper money. Just in this one list, I was able to show 30 notes, and these are just the short printed notes. There is so many more notes out there to collect that this just represents a small portion of my collection. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.